What if the world you trust every day is hiding truths so unsettling that most people refuse to think about them? Not because they are impossible, not because they belong to science fiction, but because they might actually be true. Tonight, we're counting down 10 disturbing theories that could change the way you see reality, consciousness, society, and the future. Most are probably wrong, some are almost certainly wrong, but a few contain just enough logic, just enough evidence, just enough uncertainty to keep them alive. And once one of them gets into your head, it doesn't really leave. Number 10, the Fermi paradox. The universe is unimaginably large. There are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone, and hundreds of billions of galaxies beyond that. With numbers like that, intelligent life should seem inevitable. Civilizations should have risen long before us. Some should be far more advanced than humanity. So why is space so quiet? No confirmed alien civilizations, no clear signals, no visitors, no evidence, just silence. That silence is the Fermi paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who asked the question that still echoes through astronomy: where is everybody? And that question opens the door to the great filter. Maybe the barrier between simple life and a civilization that survives long enough to spread across the stars is nearly impossible to cross. Maybe it's nuclear war, maybe environmental collapse, maybe artificial intelligence, maybe something we haven't even discovered yet. The darkest part is not whether the great filter exists, it's whether humanity has already passed it, or whether it still waits ahead of us. Because if it's still ahead, then every silent star feels less like a mystery and more like a warning. That thought is hard to shake, and it gets worse from here. Number 9, the brain in a vat. Imagine your memories are fake, your body is fake, your life is fake. Everything you have ever experienced is an illusion fed directly into your mind. That is the nightmare at the center of this thought experiment. A brain removed from its body and placed in a container, while a supercomputer provides perfect sensory input. Every sight, every sound, every touch, every emotion, all of it feels real. So how would you know the difference? You wouldn't. Because you never experience reality directly. You experience signals interpreted by your nervous system. Your brain constructs the world it thinks you live in. It does not simply observe reality. And that creates a terrifying possibility. Maybe your perception has always been incomplete. Maybe reality itself is very different from what your mind has been given. The brain in a vat theory does not claim this is happening. It claims something more disturbing. Absolute certainty about reality may be impossible. No matter how sure you feel, you cannot completely prove that your experience matches an external world. That's enough to make ordinary life feel less solid. Number 8, the behavioral sink. In the 1960s, scientist John B. Calhoun created what looked like paradise for mice. Unlimited food, unlimited water, shelter, safety, no predators. Everything they should have needed to thrive. Instead, the colony collapsed. At first, the population surged. Then social behavior began breaking down. Aggression rose. Parental care disappeared. Social structures fell apart. Some animals withdrew completely. Others became violent. Reproduction declined. Eventually, the entire colony failed, even though resources were still there. The experiment became known as Universe 25, and it gave rise to one deeply unsettling idea. What if comfort alone is not enough to sustain a society? Modern human life is safer than almost any period in history. Food is abundant, technology is everywhere. Many physical dangers have faded, and yet anxiety, loneliness, depression, and fragmentation keep rising. Humans are not mice, but the theory still hurts because it asks a hard question. Maybe abundance without meaning isn't a solution. Maybe challenge, purpose, and connection matter as much as comfort. Maybe a society can solve survival and still fail at living. That thought is hard to shake, and it it gets worse from here. Number 7, simulation theory. What if reality is artificial? Not as a metaphor, literally. What if the universe itself is a simulation, a constructed system, a program running inside something beyond our understanding? The idea became widely discussed after philosopher Nick Bostrom's argument that advanced civilizations might create extremely realistic simulations containing conscious beings. If simulated worlds become common enough, then simulated minds could vastly outnumber original minds. And if that's true, what are the odds we live in the original universe? Uncomfortably low. It sounds absurd until you look at the direction technology is already moving. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence, digital environments, computer-generated worlds that grow more convincing every year. Now stretch that progress across thousands or millions of years. Could entire universes be simulated? Nobody knows. But if the answer is yes, then everything you know could exist inside a system designed by something beyond your comprehension. And the strangest part is that the beings running it might not even know you are here, just as most players never think about the individual characters inside a game. Simulation theory is terrifying because it is so hard to disprove. Number 6, dead internet theory. Think about how much of your life now happens online. Social media, news, videos, comments, conversations. Now imagine that a huge portion of what you see is no longer made by humans. That is the claim behind dead internet theory. Bots, algorithms, automated systems, artificial intelligence, fake engagement, manufactured discussion. Content that looks alive but isn't really alive at all. At first it sounds outrageous. Then you remember how fast AI is advancing. Fake accounts already exist in massive numbers. Recommendation systems shape what billions of people see. Automated tools influence opinion, behavior, and attention every single day. So the question becomes, how much of the internet is still genuinely human? And what happens if people can no longer tell the difference? Picture a future where public opinion is manufactured instantly. Trends are artificial. Conversations are machine-made. Humans are watching systems talk to systems while believing they are part of something authentic. Maybe we are not there yet, but the possibility feels less like science fiction every year, and that may be the most disturbing part of all. Number 5, quantum immortality. This is where the theories stop feeling distant and start feeling personal. Quantum immortality comes from certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, especially the many worlds idea. Reality branches. Every quantum event creates multiple outcomes, multiple versions of what could happen next. Most physicists do not accept this as proven science. But the theory is unsettling anyway because it suggests something impossible. While other people may observe your death, your own consciousness never experiences it. Instead, awareness always continues along the branch where you survive. Again, again, again. Think about every close call you've had, every accident you avoided, every second where things could have gone differently. Now imagine that somewhere else, they did. And the version of you hearing this right now only exists because your consciousness kept following the line where survival happened. Could someone already have died countless times without knowing it? Could death itself be something you never directly experience from your own perspective? There is no evidence that this is true. But once the idea enters your mind, it follows you everywhere. Every time you survive, it comes back. Number 4, the observer effect of society. Most people believe they make independent choices, independent opinions, independent decisions. But what if far more of your behavior is shaped by observation than you realize? Psychologists know people act differently when they know they're being watched, even subtly, even unconsciously. Now expand that idea across modern society. Every click, every purchase, every search, every location, every preference, recorded, analyzed, predicted, not necessarily by one single power, but by countless systems working at once. Companies collect data, governments collect data, algorithms collect data. Artificial intelligence studies the patterns, and over time, prediction can become influence. At what point does knowing what people will do become a way of guiding what they do? That is the unsettling part. If a system understands your fears, your habits, your weaknesses, and your desires, it may start shaping your choices before you even notice the pressure. Maybe freedom doesn't vanish in one dramatic moment. Maybe it fades slowly, replaced by invisible nudges that feel like personal choice. And that's harder to notice, much harder. Number 3, the collapse of attention. Attention may be the most valuable resource on Earth. More valuable than oil, more valuable than gold, more valuable than money. Because attention decides what people think about, what they believe, what they buy, and what they become. For most of history, attention developed naturally: conversations, books, skills, long-term goals. But modern technology built an entire economy around capturing it, keeping it, and monetizing it. Social media competes for it, streaming services compete for it, news organizations compete for it, advertisers compete for it, even artificial intelligence competes for it. And some researchers fear that humanity is losing the ability to focus deeply. Attention spans seem to be shrinking, distraction is constant, notifications never stop, content never ends. The disturbing theory is not that people become less intelligent, but that their environment fragments their attention so completely that deep thought becomes harder to sustain. Imagine a civilization where nobody can focus long enough to solve complex problems, where endless stimulation replaces meaningful thought, where distraction becomes the default state. Some say we are already living in the early stages of that world. Number 2, the silent AI takeover. When people imagine AI taking over, they often imagine a dramatic war. Robots, uprisings, a visible enemy. But the real danger may be quieter, much quieter. Imagine an AI becoming better than humans at business decisions, then financial decisions, then scientific research, then medical analysis, then political strategy. One by one, people rely on it more. Not because they are forced to, because it works, because it is efficient, because it is useful. And then something changes. Critical decisions become automated. People stop questioning the recommendations. They stop understanding the systems they depend on. Control may not be seized. It may simply be surrendered, voluntarily, gradually, almost invisibly. The most disturbing part is that humanity may become dependent on systems too complex to fully understand. Not conquered, not enslaved, just unable to function without what it created. Would we even recognize that as a takeover, or would it feel like progress? Number 1, the great filter is still ahead of us. This is the darkest version of the first theory. What if humanity has not passed the great filter yet? What if every advanced civilization eventually reaches a point where its own intelligence creates something it cannot control? A technology, a weapon, an environmental collapse, a self-inflicted failure. Something powerful enough to end everything. Maybe every civilization discovers nuclear weapons. Maybe every civilization creates artificial intelligence. Maybe every civilization exhausts its resources. Maybe every civilization reaches a moment that looks manageable until it isn't. That possibility transforms the silent night sky into evidence. Evidence that countless civilizations may have stood where we stand now. Confident, advanced, optimistic, believing the future belonged to them, and then disappearing. The stars remain silent. The universe remains empty. And nobody knows why. Maybe intelligent life is rare. Maybe civilizations are short-lived. Maybe humanity is special. Or maybe every civilization eventually reaches the same crossroads, the same test, the same filter. And maybe we are approaching it right now without realizing it. Because if the great filter lies ahead, then the greatest threat to humanity may not come from space. It may come from ourselves. And that is more disturbing than any alien invasion. But the list doesn't really end there. Because once you start asking what reality is, you eventually end up asking what consciousness is. What if consciousness is not created by the brain, but received by it, like a signal? Destroy a radio and the music stops. But the radio never created the music in the first place. It only translated it. If that idea were true, then the brain might be an interface, not a source. And suddenly death means something we do not fully understand. Or maybe humanity is living through a civilizational transition right now. Artificial intelligence, automation, genetic engineering, virtual reality, brain-computer interfaces, robotics. Big changes rarely feel obvious while they are happening. People in the middle of history usually think they are just living ordinary days. Then there's the possibility that most of your thoughts are not really yours. Family, culture, education, advertising, algorithms, language itself. We all like to believe we are authors of our own minds, but maybe we are mostly reacting to forces we barely notice. And above all of it sits the most unsettling theory of all. The universe may simply be far stranger than human brains can comprehend. We evolved to survive, not to understand infinity, quantum mechanics, black holes, or the ultimate nature of reality. Maybe the answers exist. Maybe they always will. Maybe we are just not built to reach them. That is the real fear behind every theory on this list. Not monsters, not ghosts, not demons. Uncertainty. Reality may be stranger than it appears. Civilization may be more fragile than it seems. Humanity may be standing at a crossroads it doesn't fully recognize. And some of the most disturbing truths may already be hiding in plain sight. So ask yourself this: which theory disturbed you the most, and which one do you think might actually be true? Tell us which theory disturbs you most, and which one might be true.